Record. Mic trigger.
Hello friends, welcome to part 4 of the heavy metal iceberg, and we're in tier 7 and this is going up to tier 9, probably tier 10, see where we go. I want to start with just a quick disclaimer. I didn't talk very much on the Grimcore bands, or I might have spoke very little on them. The Grimcore was kind of sort of a crossover between cross-punk and metal. And from that band, we got a real sort of hard scene to a metal scene. So bands like Maypound Death were actually a Grimcore band. There was also bands like Anal Cunt and Gut Wrencher. However, Gut Wrencher went from being a Grimcore band to being a death metal band. Because Grimcore was a little bit like emo. You know how like emo stopped being emo and people just went from emo to pop punk? The very same thing happened in Grimcore, but however some Grimcore bands stayed as Grimcore. Others went to progressive metal, progressive psychedelic metal, and others just went to experimental death punk metal, which isn't to be confused with avant-garde metal. So that's a little bit of a disclaimer, which I thought I would add to the iceberg. But I thought just before we get into it, I want to just talk about, start this tier with talking about Gut Wrencher, because Gut Wrencher are a Grimcore band, but they went into death metal. And I think Gut Wrencher were more brutal, but they sugar-coated the brutalness. It's like it's like when you sweeten shit. Sugar-coated shit with an added flavouring of Canderel. I'm not saying this band's shit, but I'm saying the commercialised sound of Gut Wrencher. Like, Gut Wrencher's got, like, muddy guitars are the most fucking awesome shit you'll ever hear in your life. It's like, they're very sort of... It's a band that you think they're death metal, but they're not. Because, like, these people could play guitars like, you know, muddy, sludgy things. And the vocalist, even though he sings in a death metal style, he can get his growls to the notes of the guitar, which is something that I like about Gut Wrencher. I mean, if you're gonna growl, you know, try not sound like you've got a mic stuck up your ass, you know? Some death metal singers to me personally sound like they're being raped and they've got a cactus. They're being raped by a cactus versus a porcupine. There's so many, it's like they're vomiting and getting raped at the same time. I've said this like thousands of times, but some death metal's really good. Some of it's not, some of it is. Anyway, it's my word. So yeah, the first other band that I want to talk about is Effeldoer. Effeldoer are a experimental, progressive, avant-garde metal band. They've got sort of that elvish twang to them. It's they've got that sort of garage post 60s sound, also with a post 90s vibe. But this band isn't to be taken lightly because they're very rough around the edge where it comes to production, which, as I've said before, this is what we want to see in a metal band, you know, where they're rough around the edges and they're not trying to polish up their work, you know, they're not trying to add Canderel to their recordings. They're not trying to sweeten us up a bit, you know. Oh no. And this is the thing, right? A lot of metal bands, a lot of independent metal bands, they don't want to polish their sound too much. Because the one thing, like, you sat there mixing the guitars, and it's too deep, and like guitars have all kinds of frequencies in them. But it's when you go, it's like the thing with guitars, like, they're the first thing that everybody mixes. And what does people do with guitars to make them sound all poppy and all sort of bubblegummy? They give them, right? They drop out the high end and just give them low and middle. As you know, if you want your guitars to sound poppy, take out the low end and just leave a little bit of middle and a little bit of high end, and you will have yourself a sort of lo-fi sort of bubblegum pop vibe to it. Another thing that they do is add compression. Yeah, we don't need compression. Guitars are loud enough, right, without making them louder. Stop playing into the hands of the loudness wars. Yeah? Because you, my friend, don't need that. You do not need to add compression where it's not needed. You know, compression should be done with metal, it should be done in the mastering stage, not the mixing stage. You know? And only a very small splash of compression is needed on certain parts. A very, very, very small splash of compression. Like a teaspoon of compression. Just imagine like you're making a cup of tea for a builder and, you know, that one dunk of tea bag. Yeah, that's what you do with the compression on metal. It's just a one dunk, not tea bag straight in and leave. You dunk that tea bag, it just about touches the cup. That's what you want with compression in metal. Very slight. Enough so it gives it like a loud edge, but not enough till it sort of polishes the hell out of it. Right, I'm done with ranting on compression because I'm not here to rant about compression and mastering and so on and so forth. But it does help if we talk about production of bands on icebergs. Because, yeah, why not? I mean, my goodness grief, as we go down, like, this sort of iceberg rabbit hole thing as we go down the list. You'll see how bands kind of go down the production hole to sort of like there is now a lot of bands not releasing their work so quickly. It's come to the point where labels have had to drop a lot of bands because they're either trying to over polish their sound or they don't want to polish their sound and they're not ready to get the record sounding how they want. Which, if you're a true metalist, you'd never be happy with your mix until it's really done. That's what we're saying here, isn't it? And I don't know. Very quickly before I go on to my next band, I missed out Tool in one of the early tiers. Tool's early records were very sort of sounding more or less like Genesis versus Led Zeppelin versus whatever else was out there. System of a Down. You've got to remember though that Tool were just finding their feet in the early days. Now I like Tool when they got really experimental with their records. I think they had issues with their label quite early on. Members in the band wouldn't. It's rare to find interviews with Tool. But the engineer, he's pretty clear about where they were going with their music. But their songs are very, very strong. Their production is very tight. But because they're a progressive band, when you're progressive and you're using other forms of genre, it's important that the tightness of that band is, if you're serious musicians and, we're not talking Dream Theater, like classical trained musicians that use Metallica sounds or try and emulate Metallica and just, whatever. I'm talking about a band that's actually, these are really serious about their sound. And that's what we like Tool for. And their new stuff is even better because they're not trying to emulate the stuff that they were hearing. They're trying to just be new, which is, they're being fresh out the box, which is quite important for a band to do that. Everyone asks about my opinions, my personal opinions on Tool all the time. Have I heard of Tool? What are my opinions on them? Do I hate them? Do I love them? Well, I love Tool's earlier stuff and I love their later stuff. I'd say their early stuff's, better, but their new stuff is just as good. They haven't lost. The thing with Tool, they haven't lost that. Like a lot of bands, like say Slipknot, Korn, Machine Head, Sabbath, all the early bands. They haven't lost that. They haven't lost that energy to do an album. But, you know, I don't think every album they've done is pretty good. But there are some great songs that they've done. So, I recommend, if you're going to check out Tool, I should check out Materialist. It's one of the biggest albums that was ever around, and that they did. And there is a demo as well, which is, you can only hear it on SoundCloud. There is a demo, and there is just this one track on there where there's this drum intro, and it's the drum intro of all drum intros, I have to say. It's that good. And then the guitars come in with this amazing face melter of a riff. Now, that song came available on an album, but they cut out the intro of the drums. And also there's a mistake left in that demo as well, which is, it's one of those things where it's a golden thing. They make that mistake, but they can't do it again. They do something and they can't do it again. And I think that's the art of a good demo tape, I think. You know, but I think that's, you know, it's, I mean, Tool kind of needed to do what they did, to take a break for a while before they went and decided they were going to do a new album. I think a lot of bands need to do it because you don't have the same chemistry when you started out. It just doesn't work, you know. I mean, Iron Maiden is a very good example. In 2015, they recorded a really bad album. There was one good song on it. But the latest album is a lot better, but still, for me, it's a bit too polished. It's not Maiden. It's not classic Iron Maiden. Like, see, Iron Maiden, as I've said before in the first video, they weren't really a video to, they weren't really a band to be over polished. You know, I mean, Number of the Beast, the album, people argue it's a very polished album. Well, the remastered version is, but the original album isn't the original version, before it got overdubbed the hell out of it, isn't polished at all. And it was the way they recorded that album. Probably one of the strongest albums that Maiden did, and then Power Slave is another. And then Peace of Mind. I'd say Peace of Mind's more of a concept album. But I get into that in another day. But as I said before, they weren't really meant to be a polished band. But I think, talking about bands again, you're talking about bands in the early videos, like Cradle of Filth kept popping up a few times. But it happens. Bands do other projects. and so on and so forth. And it keeps them going.
(4:42 p.m.) Mic trigger. Mic lock. Button. Mic lock. Mic lock. Button. Is on. Double.
Gastric Zoo are a band which again, very experimental, pushing things forward, very rough around the edges. Experimenting with other things and pushing the envelope when it comes to certain things, which is very important. And they're very rough around their production, especially the guitars. They've got that 70s vibe, but there's also that kind of industrial, experimental term, which I think a couple of them have come from other metal bands. The next band I'm going to talk about is a band from Liverpool, and from what I've searched about this band, I've never done research about this band. I've watched them on YouTube and stuff, but I have researched them. They're a band that somebody recommended to me, that Nose Bruiser recommended to me, so big shout out to them. Horse Bastard are not a death metal band. I repeat, they are not a death metal band. Nor are they grimcore. They are... Well, they come from the Oi movement. Now, if you don't know anything about Oi, I won't describe it too much, but it's basically street punk. And then there is another type of... So they were cross punk, and they were also some kind of metalcore band. But Horse Bastard are very experimental, and the vocalist, he's had to take a little bit of a break from the band because of certain circumstances, from what I read, and he had some vocal issues a few years back. In fact, on one of the live videos, you can tell, but he kept on going. You can tell by the way he screams. But Horse Bastard are not the only band that Liverpool has got. This gives me a chance to tell you that there is a book about the heavy metal in the Liverpool scene. I think Liverpool is a metal city. There's a lot of people that say that it's not, but it is. Metal was sort of... Paul McCartney was very into heavy metal. Him and Ozzy Osbourne saw eye to eye. They never performed together, but Paul McCartney and Ozzy Osbourne and the Beatles inspired Black Sabbath in a massive way. And we had a lot of metal clubs around Liverpool. Liverpool have their own black metal scene, but it's not called black metal, it's called something else. I think it's like a rip of black metal. I think it's called Scally Metal, and it's more grimcore taken. I've not heard any of the bands from that scene, but yeah, they do have a gothic black metal scene that are very, very serious. Very serious people, and you know, and they definitely do you know, they know what they're into, these people. There's even in Waterloo, I don't know if I've been told that in Waterloo, I think it's either Waterloo, where they've got a little group of gothic black metal people, and I'm not entirely sure where they meet, but Bootle's got a huge metal scene in Bootle. We knew a lot of them. And there's a huge metal community in Bootle. So yeah, but Southport is a weird town. It's like a merry-go-round where genres are concerned. You know, it's neither is it a rock town or a dance town or a techno town. When people think of Southport, they think of that indie rock group Gomez. But yeah, we've had a few indie rock groups, but we've had a few metal groups. We've got 2 death metal groups in Southport, but I found out that one of them had split up, and the other one, they had somebody else from, yeah. But if you want to go to a heavy metal town, I'd suggest Bootle, as they've got a lot of metal and rock in Bootle. I mean, I remember a time when, you know, the guitar shops in Liverpool, and I remember walking into one of the guitar shops, and they just had on the wall, they had metal this was very funny. They had metal section, right? This was in a music shop. And this was like one of the big music shops. I think it was in Dawson's. That was where we saw Guitar Hero, but it just said metal section. You'd walk into the metal section, and there was this Ibanez hanging in the wall, and it said it's Slipknot's guitar, and it was hanging on the wall. And then all the other guitars had, some of them had Pantera on and Sabbath on, and they all had names from different metal groups. Yeah, that was the metal section. But yeah, that was in Dawson's. What a time. Right, we're moving on to tier 8 now. And I'm going to start off talking about a metal band that's, well, they're a new metal band, but they're a lot more to me personally. And that's Primus. I think with Primus, they're everything, aren't they? You know? I mean, they're quite light, but they're very experimental. And there's not very many people in the band, but their sound literally is You know, they have made some real anthems. A band that makes these big rock anthems, you know. And this is a band that did the theme for South Park. When you hear the South Park theme, it's not metal at all. But it's like the SpongeBob end credits. They play around. The one thing I like about the South Park theme is they take that liminal space, but then it's got that sort of slappy. Not only is it sort of slappy, but it's very rhythmic and fast paced. I mean slappy in the musical term, you know, the bing, 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 you know, that's what I describe. I mean, and it's all very, like the bass is very rhythmic and very percussive. The guitars played in a liminal way, and the vocals on that track are kind of very sort of relaxed, chilled, you know, man. Hey, we're going down to South Park, man, you know. And that's what it is. Yeah, that's how to describe that. But when you hear Primus themselves do sort of like songs like American Lives, which is just it's a huge tune. It's a huge tune that they did, and I thought, wow, you know, a huge rock tune done by this band. They also did Big Brown Beaver, which actually they did an acoustic version of that as well. But you know, to do songs like that as the big tunes, the big rock anthems, you wouldn't think a band could do these big tunes, but believe me, and they've got their own sound, you know, which it's important to have your own sound. I've introduced Primus to a few people and I'm like, wow, what's this? We've never heard it before. This is amazing. And they're a band that kind of spoke to everybody. I mean, this was a band that could have done, you know, nursery rhymes and made them sound like big rock tunes. I would suggest also that you listen to their album, their version of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, or Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory album. It's very amusing, and into the fact that they're, you know, doing their own sound. They've kept their own sound, but you know, I think that's how music should be. You should have your own sound and not try and change it, you know? And that's what I love about Primus. Yeah. The next band is Dillinger Escape Plan. Again, people have said, what's your thoughts on Dillinger? They're a mathcore band. There you go. That's my thoughts on them. And they are amazing. They're not a prog metal band. They are not prog metal. They are a mathcore band. Mathcore and math rock. I'm doing a prog rock, Iceberg. And mathcore was just math rock, but taken to a metal vibe. But there is, with Dillinger Escape Plan, there's so much energy which is used, and the way their guitars are played. Yeah, they did a new metal album, but that was the company's choice. I mean, that annoys me when record labels tell a band to record something. It just annoys. I mean, it's like you'd think that metal by now is such an anti-genre. Well, it's been damaged by so many things, hasn't it? But the main point is when the record labels come in and say, you must record a new metal album. I mean, the power ballads ruined metal for a long time. That was like a massive shit stain in the pants for a lot of bands. I mean, there was a time when they forced every band, every artist to record a power ballad. You know, I mean, it just started off with hard rock bands. They were softening hard rock bands. Then they went to actual metal bands because they got bands like Extreme, which were a hair metal band, to do a power ballad. They got Van Halen to do a power ballad. And this is like when Van Halen had gone from rock to metal. Who else did they get? They got Scorpions to do a power ballad, but Scorpions could get away with it because they were doing a twist on it. And on that album that the power ballad is on, Wind of Change, there is an interview somewhere where they state that it's not a power ballad. It's one of the best anthems they've ever done. And Scorpions at the time, a couple of the musicians were working with Ronnie James Dio. And I love Scorpions because they did 2 ballads. But Wind of Change is not a power ballad. It wasn't supposed to be used as a pop song either. It's, Anyway, I don't know why I'm discussing power ballads, but everybody and his dog was recording a power ballad in the metal scene. You know, bands like, I mean, even Motorhead did a power ballad. Yeah. I think it's called The Nicest Guy. Because even Lemmy said, he did a power ballad with Ozzy. I mean, Hellraiser could be, Motorhead's version of Hellraiser could have been deemed as a power ballad the way they did it. I mean, that album, technically for me, wasn't Motorhead as we knew it. It's not really a bad album, because I enjoyed it, but it's very light on the ears, not like their first 2 albums, But yeah. Now, I'm going to mention a band called Swashbuckle. Oh no, before I talk about that, Brain Drill are next. Brain Drill are the most punishing but awesome band at the same time. Oh man. This is a death metal band that I can listen to because they know how to play their stuff. The singer knows how to scream. They should train people how to scream properly. They should get people like Danny Filth to teach people how to scream. Production levels, though, they are very tight on their stuff. They really are. I mean, those riffs are pretty big. How they can do pretty big riffs at the speed that they play, and the guitar solos will melt your brain. But the drums are so punishing, and the vocals are so punishing. Yeah. Speaking about punishing vocals, Cryptopsy. Now, I don't really care for death metal when it comes to it, but Cryptopsy are another band that seem to really do it for me. Their early stuff's really good. The latest stuff's absolutely shit because they've polished it, but I think that's due to the record companies. It's not due to them as a band.
Mic trigger. Mic lock. Button. Mic lock. Mic lock. Finish recording. Mic lock. Button is on. Double tap to lock mic off. Use magic.
I think, the productions were polished. Right, my next band that I'm going to talk about very, very quickly is a band called Wand. And even though they're a doom metal band and very sludgy in their guitars, their production is pretty good. It's rough around the edges. It's where it needs to be. It's polished, but it's not too polished. Anyway, I've finished this for now and hope you enjoy it.
Mic trigger. Mic lock. Finish recording.